Hello, Year 8. Today what we're going to do is we are going to be looking at what actually happens if we get sick and what our body does to defend itself. So this lesson's actually going to be in two parts, and the first is called the first line of defense. Okay, so this part is fairly quick. What happens is we have a lot of general defenses to stop pathogens getting inside our body. Okay, so our amazing bodies have a number of ways of doing this, and we call this the first line of defense. We are in constant defense against microbes that could cause us serious harm. So, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is pause the video, and I'm going to post this link in posts in the chat, but also in assignments. This is the first clip I'm going to ask you to watch. This is our body's general defenses. Okay, and then what you are going to do is this. You are going to have a copy of this sheet. This is in assignments. And what it does, it's got the outline of a human body here, and it's going to explain to you the ways in which the various parts of our body stop pathogens and microbes getting in. For example, your nose produces something which traps microbes. Okay, so you fill in the blanks. Okay, and what you would do, you'd cut these, you can print this off and cut these out, and then draw a little arrow, for example, going to the nose with this part here. Okay, now if you can't do that, what you could do is this. You could simply draw your own version, outline like this, and then just use the words to explain what happens. So for example, here, eyes. Eyes have tear ducts which secrete tears. These contain enzymes which dissolve bacteria. We can also close our eyes to form a physical barrier at skin to stop pathogens getting in. Okay, so there's several, so you've got a choice. You could either draw your own outline of a person and label it like this, or if you would prefer, you can go into assignments, cut this out or copy this, and then stick these next to the bit on the outline which is relevant. However, the first thing you need to do is watch this video clip. So this will be in the chat group and also in assignments. Okay, so pause the video now and do that, please. Okay, so we've looked at ways in which pathogens are prevented from getting in our body in the first place, but sometimes they do get in. So if they do, what can we actually do about it? So the first question I'd like to ask you is this, okay? And you can ask anyone around your home. Why do most people only get chickenpox once? So pause the tape again, write that question down in your book, and try and come up with an answer as to why that is. Okay, so here is your answer. Because our body's immune system has learned to recognize chickenpox and fights off a second infection before we even show any symptoms. So before we even know we're sick, our body has already wiped out the chickenpox pathogen. So how is it able to do this? Okay, so by the end of today, all of you will be able to list two ways in which the body protects itself from harmful pathogens, explain how white blood cells defend the body against disease, and to some of you, we have to describe how antibodies work. So our blood is amazing stuff. It's got red cells which carry oxygen. By the way, those are usually much smaller. And then it's got two types of white blood cell. Now these are used in defense of our body. But how? Now, once again, there's a couple of video clips here, so I'm going to post these in assignments and also on the chat group. So pause this video now and then find these two video clips in assignments and then watch them, and then I'll come back to you in just a moment. Okay, off you go, please. Okay, so white blood cells work in three ways, and you do need to write all of these down. So the first type of white blood cell, called a phagocyte, they engulf the pathogen. I'm going to show you exactly how that works in just a moment. The second type of white blood cell, called a lymphocyte, makes something called antibodies to destroy a pathogen. And some types of white blood cell make something called antitoxins. Okay, and I'll explain how those work in just a moment as well. So the first kind, what happens is When a germ or a pathogen is inside our body, usually by this point, it would have been tagged by antibodies, and I'll explain how that happens a bit later. What happens is a type of white blood cell called a phagocyte will come along and they'll sort of adjust their cell membranes. So they're sort of engulfing this, say, bacteria. And as you can see, it will engulf it, and then what will happen is it will essentially release enzymes into this little section to dissolve it. Okay, it releases enzymes and essentially digests bacteria, pretty much killing it. Okay, so what I'd like to do is draw your own version of this. Just very quickly copy it up with 1 or 2 sentences just explaining what happens. So once again, pause the video and do that now, please. Okay, the next section is I'd like to have a look at this video link. So once again, this is the one in assignments. Okay, so quickly go to this and watch this video, and then I'm going to explain to you how the second type of white blood cells work. So pause this video and do that now, please. Right, welcome back. So the way this type of white blood cell works, this is called a lymphocyte. Now, this is quite tricky, so you'll need a bit of an explanation for this. So any bacteria or virus have these things on their surface called antigens, okay? And what they are, they're like tiny little proteins. And what these little proteins do, they advertise essentially what type of pathogen it is. So say, for example, this is cholera. Well, cholera has a very, very distinct antigen, very different from, say, tuberculosis or flu or a cold or coronavirus. Okay, they all have these little antigens. Now, your body makes something, these little proteins, which lock onto it, and these are called, as the name suggests, antibodies. Now, what these antibodies do is they lock on the antigens of the pathogen, and that does 2 things. Firstly, it forces the bacteria to clump together, basically make them useless. It's like tying them all up with rope. Okay, so these antibodies lock onto the antigens and clump the bacteria together, making them useless. The other thing they do is once the antibodies are stuck to the antigen, are stuck to this bacteria, it's like painting a target on it. What happens is it marks it for destruction. So if this has lots of antibodies on it, it's essentially got a massive, great big target. It's marked for destruction. And if that happens, then the phagocyte will come along, see that it's been marked for destruction, and do this, which is what you've already done. So what I'd like you to do now is just explain, probably will take 3 or 4 sentences, how this type of white blood cell, now this is called a lymphocyte. Okay, how does this one use antibodies to destroy bacteria? Okay, so once again, pause the video and do that now, please. Okay, welcome back. So the last thing that our white blood cells do is they produce something called antitoxins. Now, the way particularly bacteria make us sick is they get inside our body and they multiply, and their waste products that they produce are toxic to us. So bacteria will happily be going away, reproducing, but they produce lots of chemicals, and these are often toxic to us. Now, if we can't destroy the bacteria themselves, what we can do, we have white blood cells that can produce antitoxins. So here's the toxin, and what these do is these lock onto the chemicals, these waste chemicals that the bacteria produce, and make them absolutely harmless to us. So therefore, it stops us getting sick. So this is the final way that our white blood cells produce antitoxins and stop us getting sick. So once again, last time, can you now pause the video and just copy up this with a brief couple of sentence explanation? So microorganisms like bacteria produce toxins that make us sick. Our white blood cells can produce sort of antidote chemicals called antitoxins, which lock onto the toxins and stop us getting sick. So once again, pause the video and do that now, please. Okay, welcome back. So your final task today is also in assignments, and it just summarizes everything you've learned about how our white blood cells defend against disease. So you can either print it out and write on it and then upload it, or if you want to draw it straight onto the sheet and then upload it through assignments, that is also fine. Okay, so that is in assignments. It's a Word document. Just find what it is called for. Right, so this one, it's called Your Battling Body, and it talks about how your white blood cells defend against it. So what you want to do is some of this stuff you've actually already done. So you can draw your white blood cells here very quickly and draw a germ here, pathogen here. How does your body defend against it? What actually happens? Okay, and then you can try and answer these questions here. Now, we haven't actually answered the question, why don't we get sick again? I'm actually going to leave that one until the next lesson because it actually poses a much more interesting question. So once you've done this, upload it to assignments. Good luck.